Hello and welcome! My name is Morganite, and this is my Upon Completion series. A series where I talk about my experiences with games that I've completed, either on my own or on Twitch, and whether or not I'd recommend them to anyone else. So today I'll be talking about Battle Chef Brigade, a charming indie game released in November of 2017. Developed by Trinket Studios and published by Adult Swim Games, Battle Chef Brigade is a rare Kickstarter success. I had actually kept an eye on this game ever since its Kickstarter launch and was really excited to get my hands on a copy. What originally interested me was the distinctive 2D art style that has a strong anime vibe, and you don't see too many games with hand-drawn aesthetics anymore, not so much, and I love the idea of supporting such a project. The premise is a story that takes place in a fantasy world that is overrun with monsters, and in order to protect the towns and villages, the people have turned not to their military, but to trained battle chefs. These chefs go out into the wilderness, hunt monsters, harvest their parts, and then cook them into delicious meals. You play primarily as Mina, a young woman from a small town who yearns to be a battle chef, but her mother refuses to let her go try out at the annual competition because she needs her to help out at the family restaurant. Mina runs off, joins the competition, makes some friends, and ends up involved in solving a mystery and trying to save lives against an unexpected threat. One thing that I found incredibly interesting was that Mina was not a very likable character. She's painfully naive and obnoxiously selfish. I much preferred her two friends, Thrash and Kieran, to our supposed heroine. Although she does eventually grow as a character and ends up properly redeeming herself in a believable fashion, she even risks expulsion from the Battle Chef competition in order to do the right thing. The supporting characters are wonderful and hugely colorful. Belchior and Thorn are they're two of your mentors, and they're my particular favorites. And I love how vastly different they are from each other. There's also the characters that take part in the competition, and they're the characters that you have to choose from between to duel. Based on who you choose to duel, you'll likely have more interactions with some characters over others, but even though the vast majority of them are only there for a really short time, they're dynamically different and have distinct personalities. The thing that stands out the most in the game, and what originally drew me to it, is the art. This game looks like an anime, and part of me kinda wishes that it was, due to all the cool things that could be done in this world. The real star here is the sheer array of food art that was created for the game, though. And even though I was using monster parts to craft up the various recipes, I could not help but wish the dishes existed in real life because they looked absolutely stunning. And oftentimes I was jealous of the competitors because their dishes look so much better than mine. It is possible to get the same looking dish with different names a few times, but that seems to be based on the order in which you add ingredients. So if you experiment a bit, you'll actually be treated to a large variety of mouth-watering food images. These were a giant tease and made me hungry several times during my playthrough. The game has three main components or mechanics. The first is the visual novel-styled narrative mode. You don't really get to choose how you react to events, but you do have some limited choices in the order in which you do the minigames, if you do any of them at all, and you get to pick who you want to battle for the day. The second is the combat mechanic. So before you start actually cooking, you have to go literally hunt down your ingredients. There are several different areas you end up visiting over the course of the game. You don't get to choose which one. It's pre-scripted based upon who your judges are, and there is a decent variety of enemies. But there aren't too many, so you do eventually learn what each one drops when you kill or harvest them. Your combat options and moves are limited, but you can buy specializations and buffs for particular abilities that you find yourself using most often, such as upgrades to Mina's wind skill ability. The animations are simple, and the controls are manageable if a tad clunky sometimes. Do know that I played using a mouse and keyboard, so controller users may have a very different experience than I did. The third part is the actual cooking. Here it's basically a match 3 game, so if you're familiar with that formula, it's fairly simple to grasp. For those who aren't, including myself, I'd never played a match 3 game prior to this one. You basically have to match 3 of a particular element or color, in this case it's earth, fire, and water, in a row in order to level up the orb. The elemental orbs can be leveled up a total of 3 times, and each judge for the battles will ask you for a particular element or sometimes elements to be featured in the dish, and your goal is to hunt down the ingredients to fill that order. If they want primarily fire, make sure that the highest level orbs in your dish are fire, otherwise you will lose the match. The game starts you off simply and then later adds complications such as bone fragments and bits of poison into the dish. You don't want to leave poison in your dish, the judges don't like it, by the way. As well as introducing ways to remove them, or even better, to use them to your advantage while cooking. What makes the game difficult in places is the time limit that you're given. Each battle has a set time during which you have to fight enemies, collect ingredients, and cook the food. The time limit amps up the pressure, and it's easy to lose track of time while you're cooking, only to realize that you've only made one dish and are somehow going to have to go gather ingredients and throw something together for the other judge in less than 60 seconds. Also, make sure you don't forget to actually deliver the dishes to the judges when you're done cooking. I actually ended up really enjoying the battles, although there isn't any consequence to losing the matches. They just let you start them over again, despite the game's premise that you have to win 7 matches or you're out. I honestly think it would have been a bit more engaging if you were penalized with a loss when you do lose, even if you could still go and fight the same chef again later. In between the main battles and plot, you have the opportunity to do some side quests. There are 3 that are on offer: a hunting challenge, a mixing or speed challenge, and then a puzzle challenge. None of them are really necessary until the end, but you do earn gold through the side quests, and the gold allows you to buy better upgrades for your character and more advanced cooking tools and ingredients to give you an edge. So it's probably a good idea to try. The hunting challenge is basically a tutorial on abilities. The speed challenge is basically learning to see patterns in dishes quickly, and was the one that I was the worst at. And then there is the puzzle challenge, where you can take your time, and they start off simpler, but they get more and more difficult for each new puzzle. They're decent training and are all relatively easy to complete, but don't feel bad if you get stuck because, again, until the end, they're not entirely necessary. So the criticisms that I have for the game are less where the game failed and more where I see places for improvement. First of all, there isn't really much in the sense of replayability. Yeah, okay, there is a daily quest that you can do outside of the main game, but there aren't that many people who will go keep a game installed on their computer for just a few minutes of minigames. And honestly, it didn't appeal to me enough for me to even go try it. What I really wish the game had included was a versus mode. If they didn't think there was a market for online versus mode, or that it wasn't worth for the cost of running servers to do so, they still could have had a local versus mode. I would have loved to play with my friends, especially if we could have chosen from one of the 3 or 4 main characters. And yes, I do realize that would have required a bit more work insofar as animating at least 1 or possibly 2 more characters for the combat modes, but I feel it may have had a more lasting impression on gamers if the mode existed. And given how many games come out each month, that could make a huge deal in the long run with visibility of the game and its reception to fans. My other gripe has to do with the story itself. A little over halfway through, you are abruptly kicked out of Mina and are suddenly playing as her friend Thrash. You're having to learn a completely new moveset in a quarter of the time that you had with Mina, and then after you wrapped up Thrash's chapter, you're suddenly back with Mina again and have to relearn all her movesets, because, you know, you've kind of forgotten them in the meantime. It really felt like the original intent had been that each of the main friends were supposed to get their own parallel adventures, but the developers ran out of time or money and ended up just shoving Thrash's narrative in because they'd already put in some work. Thrash's story is really cute and probably draws more emotion from the player than Mina's entire campaign, given how unlikable she is at the beginning. But honestly, it feels completely out of place. His chapter goes on just long enough that you begin to forget Mina's controls, that when you're thrown back into her body, it's incredibly jarring. And there was so much work that was put into the world building in this game that, again, I would love to see an anime that took place in this world. I would definitely pay big bucks to watch that. As such, I feel that the developers could have tried doing 3 interconnecting stories in sort of a chapter, part, or season format like we're seeing from Telltale and other developers in recent years. As the narrative currently stands, it does tie together loose ends and technically does give you an ending to the story that we were being told, but the very brief time that we get to spend as Thrash, and how much it felt like we should have gotten a chance to play as Kieran ended up leaving me feeling unsatisfied. Yeah, okay, I may be overthinking things, and I can hear people telling me that it's just a cute match 3 game themed around cooking. But the narrative issues stand out for me because of my day job, where I work as a developmental editor for novels, and I can't help but see how much better the game could have been. It's not so much a flaw or a negative as it is my sadness over seeing untapped potential. In the end, while I found Battle Chef Brigade to be quite charming, and I very much enjoyed the visuals, I couldn't help but feel that it was missing something. Was it the lack of actual consequences to losing matches, the abrupt player character change, the lack of local versus mode, or the fact that I felt like the narrative was chopped down and crammed together and would have liked to play as separate characters for a longer amount of time? I honestly, it's all of the above in various degrees. But I do recommend the game if you're interested in anime-esque illustrations, in the world that the story takes place in, or if you just enjoy looking at food art and playing Match 3 games. But you may want to wait until it's on sale rather than paying the $19.99 retail price. Anyway, that's just my opinion. If you've played the game, I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. Feel free to comment down below and I'll try to get back to you. For anyone interested, links to my various social media pages are below, as well as my Twitch channel, where I stream most of the games that you'll be seeing in my Upon Completion series. So thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you here again sometime in the future.